Hi there, my name is Gilly Bachelor and I'm a personal travel consultant. So hello if we haven't met. I'm making these videos because I run my own business. I'm a travel consultancy that is based in Brewood in South Staffordshire, and in the background you can see my lovely office, and I have clients in a big presentation suite. Obviously I haven't for a while because of COVID, but they're coming back now, which is lovely. But only by appointment. I'm not like a high street agent, but I do everything that an online agent does or a high street one, but I do it for private clients and with a high level of personal service. Now, I love my job and I love travel, and I love inspiring people and I love talking to people about it. So about a year ago, or a bit more than that now, so in March a year ago, I started a helpline because what was quite clear, there was a lack of information, clear travel advice, and quite often people just wanted to speak to a professional in the industry. Now these weren't my clients because I was in touch with them regularly and we were making an amendments and I was keeping them informed. These were people that hadn't booked with me. But I made a decision, look, if you'd booked elsewhere, that wasn't a problem. If you wanted an independent second opinion, then I was more than happy to give it. What I hadn't quite anticipated that almost 18 months later, the demand for that service would still be unprecedented. The problem that we have got is so many of you have booked holidays online, and the kind of questions that you're asking, you just cannot get answers from those online operators, and quite often you just cannot get through. So many of you have been referred to me or reached out in just sheer frustration. Now, to date, I have responded to everyone that has reached out to me personally, either by message or by a call. But the problem is these issues aren't going away. So last week, I had so many calls, and these can go on for an hour or more, and they're not simple, and I can refer people to resources. Now, I run my own business. I have a small business, and it's been quite tough in travel, as I'm sure you can appreciate. I don't want to leave people high and dry. So what I've done is created this long video, okay, and they're going to be shorter ones looking at specific areas. This video is recorded on what's called Freedom Day, so 19th of July 2021. Very exciting because from today, if you're traveling to green but also amber destinations, there is no advice against all but essential travel. So holidays to these destinations are possible. Challenging, but possible. So that is great news. And we're seeing a lot of people who are interested in imminent travel. We've also got so many of you that may have booked online. You may never do it again, but you did it 2 years ago and you still haven't managed to get on that holiday, and you'll still keep rolling it forward. And situations change and you're reaching out for advice and information. So this video is designed, and if you watch it from end to end, it's designed to go through the process of the things that you need to consider if you're planning to travel this year. Now, advice is changing all the time, so it doesn't necessarily give you destination-specific advice, but what it does is give you a way to get it, and that's the key, because nobody right now could be current. There is so many changes, it would be impossible, but the key is to know what you need to do and where those resources are, and that's what this long video is about. And there will be short videos that I will make subsequent to this, which will cover each area. So let me tell you, travel is possible. I've had people going to Antigua, St. Lucia, Greek main islands, Kos, Corfu, Portugal, just to mention a few. They didn't travel illegal, they didn't travel against advice. Some of them elected to do quarantine, but they went when it was possible, either in the travel corridors last year or when we've been allowed to this year. And all of the feedback has been overwhelmingly good. And that is because we've gone through a process, we're very well organised, and we've only selected hotels and destinations where I feel confident that the experience can be good. Now, throughout this video, I'm going to refer to a trip that I've just done to St. Lucia. I returned just over a week ago on the 11th of July. And the reason I'm using St. Lucia is it will give you a structure. But remember, each of the composite parts could be different for your destination, but it starts to flush out the issues that you need to consider and resolve before you travel. So reach out to me if you are looking to book a holiday and you want some professional advice. But if you want to do it on your own or to book online, then watch my videos and then hopefully they'll give you all the guidance you need. If you've got any other questions, then just message me and I'll incorporate them in another video. I'll keep making them as long as people need them. It's just easier for me to do these and share them amongst many of you rather than doing all of these one-to-ones continually. I hope you understand. Okay, so I've got notes and lots of them, so I am going to be looking down. Please don't question the production value of this video. It is shot on my own iPhone. It's going to be done in one take. This is me. This is the lighting. It's the words really than the background that we need to be interested in. So I apologise for that up front. The first thing we are going to look at is destination entry requirements. Okay. These are not anything to do with the UK. They're nothing to do with our government. They are to do with what does that country say that visitors need to do to visit. Okay, a lot of people neglect this and they go straight to the traffic lights or to RFCDO, but they forget that every country has a right to make a decision on who it lets in and on what basis they let them in, and that is the first key. So let's be clear. Our government has set up a traffic light system. The vast majority of countries that are in green, we cannot go to. We're restricted. So you need to reference, in my opinion, 3 things. And this is the first thing you need to reference. What is that destination saying about what you need to go? What you need to do. So let me use again, as I said, the example of St. Lucia. So before I went to St. Lucia, there was a number of things I had to do. I had to apply online for authority to travel from the St. Lucian government. So I had to tell them who I was flying with, where I was staying, and I had to provide proof of that, because at the time you could only then stay in COVID certified hotels. So they wanted to check that I had a valid booking at one of these COVID certifieds, and that I was also on a designated flight. Okay, they wanted to know that. And then what I had to do, you can fill that in a couple of weeks before travel. And then I had to take a PCR test, which is a COVID test. I took a private test and I needed to upload the negative result and the fit to fly certificate. So that certificate would have my passport details on it. It would have my full name as per my passport and my date of birth, so they could marry everything together. Okay, and they also asked about my vaccination status. Okay, and I'll come on to that in a minute. No proof required for that at this stage, just asked about it. And I said I was fully vaccinated. Okay, so what then happened was I uploaded this, and then 24 hours before travel, I got an email, which I had to download, which had a QR code on it, barcode or QR code, one of these. And basically I had to take that with me. Okay, because that was saying that I had passed all the checks that needed to be done before departure, and that on that basis I was welcome to come to St. Lucia. So also with St. Lucia, as with many other destinations, and again I'm using this as a general example so you understand the issues, there is now a distinction between fully vaccinated and non-vaccinated. Now let's just talk about fully vaccinated. For St. Lucia, that was 2 jabs, and it was by a recognised brand. All of ours are compliant in this. And I had to have had my last jab no less than 14 days before I travelled. That is what qualified as fully vaccinated. One vaccination or a second vaccination a couple of days before I went would be unvaccinated. Now for St. Lucia, what that means is I can go there and I can leave the resort. I had a little band on that said that I was fully vaccinated, so I had more freedoms. Now, our son travelled with us for the first week. He's only 31, so he's only had the first vaccination. He was treated as unvaccinated and he could not leave the resort. And this is a really, really good point that you need to check, because some people never leave a resort. It doesn't matter if it's a big resort, it's all inclusive, there's lots of activities. They might just be going just for some sunshine or relaxation and a few cocktails. Absolutely perfect. So leaving the resort might not be a showstopper. But if you've booked a small B&B somewhere, it could well be a showstopper. So you need to consider that. So anyway, we were allowed out and about, but he wasn't. Okay. So they're the first things. You need to assess what the entry requirements are and whether you can meet them or not. And they will be specific for groups of countries. We used to be grouped with Europe, but now obviously we're not part of Europe. You need to specifically look at saying what is the requirements for people transiting through the UK or just coming from the UK as visitors, because the rules between different countries can be quite different. In the resources that go along with this video, they are going to give you a link to a resource that you can use with our own government. And what you can do is register for travel updates. Do not register for all of them. You will be inundated with updates. You can register for the specific holiday destination or destinations you're going to, and every time there is a change, you will get an email update. So really, really useful service. Second of all, I've included examples of in-country websites. Now, the reason I say this is that when we went to St. Lucia, I also used the St. Lucian one because that would be the most up to date, because it can take 24 hours from that to filter to our website. So you need to monitor both. Now, I cannot give you every relevant website for every destination. So I've given you examples which will help you like do Google searches to find the ones you need. So register with our government one so you're getting current updates, and also monitor the destinations website, because those requirements coming in can change. Like, for example, we had a big change recently with Malta. Fortunately, it's been resolved, but they were saying that they wouldn't treat anyone with certain batches of the AstraZeneca vaccination from the UK. They wouldn't treat them as vaccinated, and that can create problems because then you might have issues with quarantine and such like. So before you book or before you travel, make sure you understand what those restrictions are, what you need to do to enter, and what happens when you're there. Because when you're there, you need to follow their rules. That could be mask wearing, social distancing. It could also be quarantine. Like, for example, if we were going to Italy at the moment, then we've got an inbound quarantine, and we're tending to see more of this for Europe. Sometimes the quarantines are lax for people who are double vaccinated, but it does depend. So check and keep checking. And remember, that can change whilst you're away. So that's the first one, destination entry requirements, okay? Second one, before I get on to my second one, let me give you a reality check on that. Everything was checked at the airport, okay? And people were denied boarding, okay? Because they didn't have the right certification. We're seeing more and more of this. Last year, people tended to get through on a wing and a prayer. This year, they're not, okay? So, and remember, it is you that is responsible to make sure you meet those. Now, you might be booking for a travel agent who will advise and guide you, but ultimately the responsibility will always be yours. So don't you be the one that's creating the queues at the airport because you haven't got the right paperwork, and don't you be the one that's denied boarding. So let's get it right. It's more straightforward than you think, okay, once you know where to go for the resources. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at, apologies to look down, is the FCDO. This used to be the FCO, but it seems to have been renamed, but it's our Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. Now, this is nothing to do with the traffic lights. Again, this is all to do with what risk our government thinks you as an individual will face in that destination. So previously, you would have understood it better if there had been like terrorist attacks or war. Like, for example, the Sinai Peninsula. I don't think that's ever had guidance recently that says nothing, that says you can go there. It's always advised against all but essential travel. And with COVID last year, pretty much every destination had that slapped across it. Over the last weeks, we've seen this changing, and more countries are coming off that all but essential travel list. Now, a holiday is never essential, so you wouldn't be able to go on holiday there. Also, there are two factors. Typically, if the FCDO says no travel, it triggers refunds for holidays, though that is changing, and that's something we need to address. That isn't quite as black and white as that now. But also it can invalidate your travel insurance. Okay, so we went to St. Lucia at the time of between us booking our insurance and going, it did change, but at the time our Foreign and Commonwealth Office advised against all but essential travel to St. Lucia. As a travel agent, I do have some exemptions because I needed to travel, but my assessment was it was safe to do so. It actually changed whilst we were there. Okay, but I had to then get a separate policy from a specialist, okay? Again, I'll talk about those separate policies. I use a Hayes-backed stroke rush policy for my clients, and it's got some really good points in there. Pre-travel, i.e. if you had your COVID test and you were positive, or you had to track and trace. There's cancellations and you've got cover for that. But no standard policy that I have ever come across, okay, and I'm happy to be proven wrong on this, will allow you to travel, okay, against FCO advice. If you do that, in every case I've seen, your insurance policy is invalid. Now, advice is changing it so it's not so bad, and there are specialists out there. Now, I have no affiliation with this company, but I'm going to be honest with you. These are who I use for my St. Lucia trip. Wouldn't have needed them now if I was going. But if you're in a situation where you want to travel and you're going against advice, you need a specialist policy, okay? I used a company called Battleface. Okay, there are other providers out there who will do Europe, but they were the only ones that I could find at the time that would allow me to travel internationally, i.e. the Caribbean. Okay, now, as I said, I've got no affiliation with them. They provided me with what I needed, but I'm just saying they're a resource worth checking out if you find yourself in that situation. Okay, so that is the FCO. Great news is things are changing and we're seeing less blanket bans. As we're in Freedom Day, more and more destinations are coming off that list. Red destinations will still retain that FCO advice, but green and amber shouldn't any longer. There are anomalies in there, but it shouldn't, so do check. So you've checked the destination entry requirements, tick. You have now checked the FCO website, okay, to see if it's all but essential travel. It isn't, tick, we're good to go, okay? So now the third element of it is the travel traffic light system. I thought a traffic light had 3 lights. How wrong could I be? Our traffic light system has 5 traffic lights. It has green, it has a green watch list, it has amber. As of last week, it has amber plus, and it has red. Okay, there are 5. Okay. So currently, the government from the 19th of July, as of today, is saying that it's no longer restricting travel. It's not all but essential travel to anything that is green watch list, amber and amber plus. Okay, doesn't mean that there aren't restrictions still, but it means it's not got this global advice in place. So let's look at green first of all. There is a relatively long list of green countries that which would mean that if you went to them, you would not have to quarantine on your return to the UK. Okay, the problem is that long list, the vast majority you can't get to without going via somewhere. Okay, another big tranche of them aren't welcoming aren't welcoming visitors from the UK. So let's look at Australia and New Zealand, but let's look at Bulgaria. Bulgaria went green today, sunny beach, here we come. However, going back to my original point about entry requirements, it's actually made it very difficult now for Brits to go to Bulgaria unless it's essential travel. So it's on the green list. We can go, our government says we can go and not quarantine. Bulgaria doesn't want us. And this is what we need to really, really bear in mind. You've got these 3 scenarios that you need to match up. It sounds really complex. It actually isn't that complex because we're actually just really working with a handful of destinations that we can practically get to. And again, I'll come on to that. So green means no quarantine on your return. You still have to follow the destination entry requirements. Still have to check that the FCO says you can go. In most cases, all cases for green, it says that you can. Okay, but you need to do something else. Okay, 72 hours before you're due to return, in resort, you have to do a return COVID test. It is what is called an antigen, or it's what is called a lateral flow test. Now, the resorts that I liaise with do this whilst you're there, which is brilliant. In St. Lucia, I stayed at the Body Holiday and I stayed at Sandals Le Grand, but all Sandals resorts do it. They do it free of charge. It was so easy. We had breakfast, we had an appointment, popped down, little nasal swab, done and dusted in 5 minutes, and the results were printed with the Fit to Fly, which has got my passport number, my date of birth and my full name on it. We collected them for reception the following day. That's all I need to travel back. Now, if you are not in a hotel that is giving that service, now for my clients, we check that, and before they go, we make sure we know how they're going to get that 72-hour test, because otherwise it can be uber stressful. Typically there is, as I said, we do it in the hotel, if that's possible. Most offer a free service. Some will charge a nominal fee, okay? And we can check that before you go. The second thing you can do, and I use a company called Cured, so Qured. No affiliation with them. It's just that we've had a good success with clients in terms of the service. So we've tried and tested the service numerous times and it works. And what happens with them is that you apply for the test before you go. It's a lateral flow. You pop it in your suitcase and you have a video appointment which sits within those 72 hours. And they, over that video, you'll do the swab and such like, because they can see that you're doing it correctly. And then you can actually produce the results yourself for a lateral flow, a bit like the NHS ones you've got. And it will be validated then by Cured, okay? And they will give you and email you that certificate. It's £39, which to my mind, you know, if you can't get it done free and resort, is a great alternative. And it's a scheduled meeting and we've had good success for it. So you need to understand how you're going to get that 72-hour test. It's pretty straightforward, but you still need to do it, okay? So green list, you still need to do 72 hours. You also have to complete a passenger locator form before you come. I think anyone that isn't digitally aware or doesn't use stuff online, this is very, very complicated. Fortunately, I haven't had that. Normally, you know, you're going to have an iPhone or such like to do this. I mean, so much has gone digital with COVID, it's just untrue. So you need to fill in that passenger locator form. It's going to ask you where you're coming from and where you're going, etc., like, and where you've been in those last 10 days. Because it's not just where you've come from. If you've come from a variety of countries in those 10 days, it wants to know all of those, okay? But the key point about that is you have to register the code off your PCR test on that form. If you do not register the code, that form is not valid, okay? Now, when you get back, you'll have ordered the test before you go, or whilst you're on holiday, it'll be at home for you when you get back. You'll do the test and then you'll pop it in the post. You don't have to quarantine, you don't have to do anything else. It's more of a tracking service, okay? Now, we have Amber. Okay, now in Amber, we have a division now between fully vaccinated and non-vaccinated or partially vaccinated. So if you're fully vaccinated, you have exactly the same process as if the destination was green. Test at 72 hours before you return home, fill in the passenger locator form, book a test for day 2, send it off, okay? If you're not vaccinated, okay, as of today, you still have to do a test at days 2 and 8. And you also have to quarantine for 10 days, okay? So that's what's putting a lot of people off. But if you are fully vaccinated and travelling with children under 18, okay, not 18 and under 18, 1 to 17, they can return with you as if they're in your vaccination bubble, okay? But if you've got a child, for example, that's 19, I've got the situation very much at the moment. We've got mum and dad coming back that are fully vaccinated, 17-year-old part of the vaccination bubble, 19-year-old has to do a test at days 2 and 8 and has to quarantine for 10 days, even though she's part of the same family. Now, there is an option to do test and release. Now, we came back from St. Lucia before the 19th of July. So we had, and it was Amber, so we had to do tests at days 2 and 8. We also elected to do what's called test and release. So we did the test on day 5, and then we got the results on day 6, so we could then come out of quarantine. A lot of people like to do a same day test. You could come out on day 5, you could test in the morning if you're using a service that which will get you out that day. Okay. We now have something called Amber Plus, and the only destination in this is France. Now, do you know what? I'm actually treating this as a hugely positive change. People think, you know, I've heard so much fraud, and I'll tell you why I'm treating it as a hugely positive, as 2 reasons, but let's just cross off what it is first. Okay, Amber Plus means you can still go there, okay? But if you return from an Amber Plus destination, regardless whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated, you must quarantine for 10 days and you must do that test at 2 and 8. You can elect to do the test at day 5 as well for test and release, but you must fulfill all of those requirements, okay? So it's a bit like the old Amber, really. But that is if you are, if you're vaccinated or non-vaccinated, you're all in the same bag together. Now, the reason actually I'm quite positive about this is because a lot of people say to me, Gilly, I can't face travelling on Amber because what happens if it goes red? So let's just bottom off what red means. If you're returning from a red country or via a red country. You might be connecting. The big international hubs like Dubai are still red. You might be coming from an amber country, but you're still going to have to do that hotel quarantine. So before you return, up to 14 days before you return, you have to apply online. You pay £1,750 per person. If you're sharing a room and you've got children and stuff, it is slightly cheaper. And again, that's in the documentation. That includes your transport to the hotel, your food and such like at the hotel, and the testing. It's £1,715. Yeah, £50. It's a big wedge. So people are saying to us, my God, we cannot afford to go away to an amber destination and end up in hotel quarantine. So the great thing now is with having Amber Plus is that we've got a buffer. Okay, we're not going straight from amber into red. Okay. Now, in my mind, that means, if something, we're on alert for France now. So the next place for France to go is red. Okay. That's the problem with France. So I would not be encouraging anyone to go to France right now. We'd be looking to try and get people back. It's not, not essential they come back immediately. But we know if the situation worsens, the only place it can go is red. Okay. So if we've got this kind of buffer in between, I know that you've elected to go on to an amber if you're fully vaccinated. You don't want to quarantine. But if I said to all of my clients, you should not be travelling this year if a quarantine is a showstopper. Too much is fluid, okay? So, and things are changing all the time, okay? You can do everything that you need to do to prevent it, but it is still a possibility. And those people from returning from France have now found themselves in that reality, okay? So it gives us a buffer then between amber and red, but also it gives us a buffer the other way. We have a lot of countries that are sitting in red, and let's use the UAE. So we've got Dubai and Abu Dhabi in there. That is creating huge problems, okay, because they are such a hub to get us out to other destinations, which might be amber or even green, okay. So there is now an option for the government to move them from red into Amber Plus, okay, so it can move both ways, okay. So for me, this feels quite positive because we haven't got this sort of draconian switch. Nothing is guaranteed, but if you monitor the statistics, we have quite a good idea of what's going and what is moving. So that is the traffic light. So the next biggest question I get asked is, when do they change? Okay. Today, the 19th of July 2021, we have just had an implementation of changes. They were announced last week and they were implemented today, okay? So we know the announcements comes every 3 weeks and the implementation every 3 weeks. So let me just check on my dates here. So yes, we are expecting an update the week commencing the 2nd of August. Now it should be on a Thursday. Last week we heard it on a Wednesday, and then we heard something on a Friday as well. So throughout that week commencing the 2nd of August, we're expecting changes, and they would be implemented on the 9th of August. Okay, so when I'm looking at my destinations with my clients, we look at the statistics, but we also look at that window. So if you were traveling between today and the 9th of August, it's the largest period of stability that you have got, okay? Where problems come is if you're traveling over those updates, okay? Because something could go positive, it could go to green, happy days, but it could go to amber or amber plus in that time. I've got two huge caveats. First of all, the government's announcement schedule is all over the place and they're not really committing to anything. So things can change at any time. But if we're looking at mitigating risk, the lowest risk period to travel is within those 3 weeks, between the implementation and the next implementation. So the 19th is implemented today. The next implementation, as I said, is the 8th of August. No guarantees, but just less risk. Okay, and I'm asked that question a lot. Okay, I'm just going through my notes on that one. Okay. So we've talked about, regardless of whatever destination, if you're going on an international holiday at all to any destination, you've got to test before you come into the UK, and you're going to have to test after you've arrived, either 1, 2 or 3 tests, okay, not avoiding it, okay, whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated, you've got some tests to do. People seem quite confused by that, but you've definitely got some to do. Now, on PCR tests, okay, or lateral flow, first of all, you need to check and double check what test is required, okay? PCR tends to be treated as more belt and braces. So if you needed a lateral flow and you've got a PCR, you tend to be in a better position. But if you need a PCR and you've got a lateral flow, it's not going to fly, okay? And then the other thing with that as well is the tests are all the same, okay? What is different is the paperwork. So if you had a PCR test done on the NHS, okay, or you did a lateral flow test at home, the actual physicality of the test is all the same. What is different is the paperwork. And this is key because if you rock up at the airport with a PCR test that doesn't have that fit to fly certificate, either way, when you go out or return, you can be denied boarding. And what makes it a fit to fly certificate is your passport number on there, your date of birth and your full name, okay? So we had people at the airport when we were going to St. Lucia who rocked up with tests that were negative, but they were not they did not have fit to fly certificates with them, with the passports on them, because those two pieces of information need to tally to make that a valid document, okay? Really key this, okay? Because the tests are all the same, but it's the paperwork that's different. So don't get caught out with that. So when you're applying for a test, okay, there are government assessed sites, okay, that are authorised. Again, in here, I will give you a link out to that webpage and it will go through all the authorised sites. But they're often authorised for different things. So just make sure you're booking the right test. And if you're unsure, you need to check and check again, okay? The price of testing is falling. I use a company which we have a discount on. So we do our PCR test. You can go, you self-administer it, but someone helps you. And it's £55 and you get the results back the following day. I was shocked when I did my test and release one on Saturday, the amount of people who were there using a 24-hour service that were flying the following day. You really run a risk of not getting your results back, and no agency will underwrite the cost of your flight or holiday if those results don't come back in time. So what I say to you is just, you know, plan early and make sure that you've got your slot booked, okay, even if you need to move it around, okay? Okay, we've gone through all of this. Quarantine. Okay, so the requirement to quarantine is now reducing substantially if you're double vaccinated. So if you're going to a green destination, nobody's quarantining on their return. If you are fully vaccinated and going to an amber destination, you're not quarantined, or anyone who's under 18 travelling with you. But if you're over 18 and not fully vaccinated, you are quarantining, or now with Amber Plus, you are quarantining. I see lots of people say, oh, well, no one checks up. Let me tell you, that is not true. Last year, I went to both Crete and Fuerteventura. And when I went as part of the travel corridor, which meant we could return without having to quarantine. Whilst I was there, both changed. So we had to, at the time, we had to then quarantine for 14 days. There was no testing at that stage, and we were never checked. And I think probably we complied because obviously it's part of my trade. I need to do that. But I think that perhaps people had a lax attitude for it. And that's where that mentality has come from. I don't know. But let me tell you, something fundamental has changed regarding quarantine. The government put out a £90 million contract for a company to monitor and follow up quarantine compliance. It was won by MITI. There was a £90 million contract. And that started roughly from about April. Okay. So if you've been traveling since April, quarantine is very different. So let me tell you, I returned home from St. Lucia on the 11th of July. Every single day I have received one or more call saying, this is your day one, this is your day two, have you done this, have you not done this, okay? Now, I have answered all of my calls, okay, and I haven't had a visit. My son, who travelled with us for the first week, for various reasons couldn't answer all his calls, he got a home visit. There's £90 million on the line here. People are checking and double checking. So do not travel if quarantine is in place. If you're not going to quarantine, you will get caught and you will get fined. Just be very, very careful. Okay. I've put don't focus on cheap deals. Again, I have a lot of people. I'm just going to have a little, let me just have a little swig here. I promise you it's not a gin and tonic, it's just a tonic. Don't focus on cheap deals. There are a lot of hotels and destinations that haven't been open. And now they're desperate to get people back there, so they're putting out crazy offers. Okay, you really need to look at what was going on in that destination and what has been going on in that hotel. Do you really want to rock up to a hotel that's only been open for a week? Because with the best will in the world, they could have the best COVID protocols known to man, but without staff training and testing and trialling, there's always delay. So the very best hotels that I work with, I hadn't been recommending some of them because they're still bedding in their COVID protocols, and it's, you know, people are saying, oh, there's queues for breakfast, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that. So if we look at Greece, for example, Greece had a really good 2021. It remained open. It's got good protocols in place, and a lot of hotels and resorts remained open. Not all of them. They did rationalise it because obviously there was a lot less visitors, but they have had a year. St Lucia's the same. St Lucia opened in July 2020. So we were going to a hotel that has been operating for a year. And it's quite clear because its protocols were embedded and the customer experience was really great, but they were strictly adhered to, and they had staffing levels and such like in place. It's a bit sad really, because those companies and resorts that have got deep pockets can afford to put the staff in. But what we're seeing from smaller hotels and such like is they've got all these protocols that make things more difficult and complex, but most of their staff, they can't afford to bring back, so they're running on a skeleton. You just need to, what impact is that going to have on your holiday? That is why I only book holidays for clients when I have first-hand knowledge of what is going on in the resort, okay? So what is open, what is different, what has been going on, okay? Because I think, you know, holiday time is really precious, and particularly now when people haven't travelled for a while, the last thing you want to do is go somewhere where your holiday is a disaster. And that's why people use me, is because I am highly selective. So right now, I'm only working with a very limited number of destinations and hotels because I want to make sure that my clients have a flawless experience, or as flawless as they can. And that is why my feedback from my clients is so good, because they want to go somewhere. I'm saying, well, I'm sorry, but I'm not sending you there because of these reasons, which they then go on to understand. Okay, being flexible. Okay, let's look at flights and flight schedules. Okay, so again, let me use my example of St Lucia. Our flights changed 5 times. Also, all of my clients travelling in June and July, we saw some sort of schedule change. And for my August travellers, we're seeing some schedule changes. What this is to do with is airlines are either rationalising. For example, there used to be 4 flights a week to St Lucia. Now there's only 1. It's actually increasing again now. You know, so we were all kind of like, we lost our midweek flight. So we either could go for 8 days or 15 days and nothing in between. So we had to kind of change all our hotel and stuff around that. Now, if you've booked a package, it's up to the package, so your holiday company or your travel agent or your tour operator to sort that out for you. Okay, so they will either say, look, you can go for longer or you can go for shorter, or you're going to go on different times. Now, if it's a significant change, you can cancel and have a refund. But change, everything is changing. So if you are listening to this video and you are putting together lots of separate elements, make sure that everything is flexible and fully refundable, because I think we're seeing more stability with, we had a situation where certain hotels weren't opening, but if the hotel's been open, you've got less of an issue with that. But flight schedules are changing all of the time. Also with flying as well, my flight to St Lucia was about 3/4 full. A colleague of mine has just been to Menorca. The flight was 100% full. And even though we're in Freedom Day, the airlines are still stipulating that masks need to be worn. And I think that is more than acceptable. And also, you know, hand washing and sanitizing and such like. Please do not think that there will be social distancing on flights. There will not be. That if they can get every seat filled, they will do it. Okay. So just bear that in mind. Okay. Now, what am I recommending? Okay. So The first thing is we have now Croatia has gone green and we can go to Croatia. So that is a really good option right now. I've had a lot of success with Greece. It's been amber, but if you're fully vaccinated and your children are under 18, it's a great destination. And I've got some beautiful resorts that I'm working in there that we've had a really good experience with. St. Lucia, I've had such an amazing time and I've had a lot of clients come and go. And now if you're double vaccinated, because it's amber, then you're not quarantining. Antigua is green. But also the big one for me as well is Seacation. So this year we're seeing 19 ships, 3 brand new ones. One of them is MSC Virtuoso. We've also got the Scarlet Lady, who are offering Seacation. So some of them you can get off of. Some of them, I'm doing a 4-day Princess one that's going in August. We're not getting off. I'm happy with that. But they're such great value when you look at a weekend break in Cornwall, because most of them, obviously they include your accommodation, go for a balcony. Most of them include, all your food's included, but include free drinks. On our Princess one, we're paying like £500 per person for 4 days for a balcony cabin. Okay, that includes all my food. That includes a drinks package. Can't wait. Okay, so all my soft drinks, coffees, but also all my alcoholic drinks. I think it's under £10. And also my Wi-Fi and gratuity. So it's a great deal. I don't know where else I would get that. Hopefully the weather will be kind, but if it's not, there's lots of entertainment on the ship if there's not. So I would recommend that you consider that as well. So that is like 40 minutes of a canter through the situation you find yourself in the checklist and things that you need to do. There will be individual videos that come now, but this I would recommend if you're going to travel that you listen to this one in full and then you start to look at the other sections. I hope that was useful. This will be on my YouTube channel. You can subscribe and please, also refer me to friends and colleagues. And if I've missed anything out or you want clarity on it, do not hesitate to ask, just message me. Guys, enjoy Freedom Day, but still stay safe and still take care of yourselves. Bye for now, guys. Thanks for listening.